The strange and proven law of probability is fundamental to atomic reality. It's impossible to predict subatomic events. There's probability. Once observed, it's permanent.
Poetic Empiricist Thought Sparks Fire, 2015.
Everything is bound in never-ending motion. We're no different. Our existence causes commotion. The Zohar spoke of participant observation, reality shaped by the mind and expectation. We contribute to the universe's energy, which has inexplicable connectivity.
Poetic Empiricist Thought Sparks Fire, 2015. If you wanted to live on the moon, what would you need? I've asked this brainstorming question to many different groups of students, from adults to kindergartners, and their answers are always about the same: air, water, food, shelter, clothing. My point was to establish how very little we need and how readily and generously the earth supplies for many of our needs. Of course, there may be things we would want to bring to our hypothetical moon colony extraneous to those needs. Needs and wants are two very different things, but often confused concepts. Back on earth, where our quality of life is higher, it's easy for lines and minds to blur. Wants are not inherently bad. Recognizing the difference between wants and needs, then making choices based on this distinction, is an awareness to foster. I feel wants are best if they are in alignment with needs. That is, we need what we want and want what we need. This alignment is rarely the case in a consumer-based modern society. Our needs and wants are typically out of balance. We often want what we don't need, which in turn can contribute to us not wanting what we do need. When I was in my late teens, I fell hook, line, and sinker for the whole premise of Buddhist philosophy. It just makes sense. Basically, wants and acquiring things creates attachments. And once you are attached to something, you fear losing it. This brings about unhappiness. Things will never fulfill us. Experiences never fulfill us. We can grow addicted, endlessly attempting to capture that which cannot be captured outside of ourselves. There is simple joy that arises from limiting the mind's wants. The ability to live simply brings a freedom not typically experienced by many modern societies. In a sprawling country like the United States, its vastness is unconsciously reflected in our attitudes, conspicuous consumption, and ecologic footprint. My mom was born in France at a U.S. military base. As a teenager, she spent several weeks there, immersed in the French language and culture. As children, we loved to hear stories about her time there. One we found particularly amusing was in regards to the nightly dinner arguments her aging hosts got into. It all centered around one thing: a car. Cars in France, as in the rest of Europe and much of the world, are compact. Nightly, the arguments swirled around her husband's desire for a large American car. The car wasn't the only point of contention, it was also the garage. Garages in Europe are naturally petite too. There is no space to waste. The fight was never resolved before my mom returned home, so it was unclear whether Maurice ever got his boat of a car and a place to park it. What is clear is that the vast majority of countries outside the U.S., people live off way fewer resources. Carrying capacity is maximized when the average person consumes and wastes less. More people can survive in a smaller area when the demand and consumption is decreased. My Chinese friends always marveled at the space Americans are blissfully unaware of, from our spacious single-family homes sitting on large plots of unfarmed land to our comfortable, partially filled restaurants, our wide streets, empty sidewalks, our sprawled-out beaches. This is not typical of other countries around the world, this luxury we are unaware of. Here we can go for a hike in the woods and be the only human for miles. Around the world, crowds and congestion abound. Space is limited, a hot commodity. These examples are an artifact of our country's size and population density, but it trickles down into the mindset of the citizens. In the U.S., we are wasteful in many ways with our abundant resources. We create an overloaded and rapidly moving waste stream, while a percentage of our citizens still struggle to survive and feed themselves. The mindset of many in this country is that wants are needs and the concepts are synonymous. My father is a chemical engineer, a calm and fair person, one of the brightest people I know, intellectually and emotionally. When I was 10 years old, my father made his first trip to India. He was there over a month to start up a chemical plant in the middle of nowhere. On weekends, he had time to travel their vast country and was haunted by a lot of what he saw. Despite having an American chef to attempt American cuisine, he returned home to us in very frail condition. I'll never forget running out to greet him in the driveway. He was hauling in his bags and staring directly at his home. He said, "We live in a castle." He said this with so much conviction that I knew it reflected all that he had witnessed in India. He kept a travel journal and allowed me to read it. It was written with a tone of awe and disbelief. Nearly 30 years later, I can still conjure some of the images his writing created in my young, impressionable mind. Images that spoke of desperation, unfathomable poverty, and the senselessness of everyday tragedies. His experience had been formative in my life.